Responding to questions around the source of our creatine following statements like this that appear online is something that takes up an enormous amount of our clinical support team's time. And I thought it was about time to really just show facts over fear-mongering and get to the bottom of this once and for all. Brands and influencers or creators that are connected to the German-derived creatine Creapure or Creavitalis have suggested quite strongly online using fear-based marketing strategies that China-sourced creatine is inferior, contains contaminants, and is of a lesser quality or is quote-unquote cheaper or fake creatine purely because of the country of origin. Now, I want to clear that up. It's completely unfounded and untrue, and it's based on really outdated information, which I would like to share with you. Brands that use German creatine are citing this paper published in the Journal of International Society of Sports Nutrition by some very well-known creatine experts as proof that if your creatine comes from China, it must be inferior and it must contain contaminants. Let me show you the statement from this. Now, one thing I want to point out is this is a review. It's not a study. No experiments were conducted in this publication. Okay, so this is the statement that we're seeing being cited online as evidence that China-derived creatine is of a poorer quality and may even be a risk to your health. Now, you can understand that if consumers hear this information, they're understandably distressed. They're taking a supplement that they think is improving their overall health, only to find out that perhaps it's doing more harm than good. Well, I'm here to tell you, this is really old information. Okay, just drawing your attention to the reference that's been cited in this review. Here is 197. So you click on that and it says creatine, its chemical synthesis, chemistry, and legal status in biochemia. You click on that DOI, it's going to take you to the reference, which is going to come up here. So this is actually a chapter in a book that was published in 2007. Okay, so I found a copy of this particular chapter of the book, and I just want to read out to you the statement that it makes about China-sourced creatine. So here you can see creatine, its chemical synthesis, chemistry, and legal status. So the same book. We're on page 303, and here is where it's going to start talking about potential impurities. Okay, I'm just blowing up this text to make it a little bit easier to read, but you can see that these percentages that are cited in the 2021 publication, the review, are referenced here in this 2007 book about creatine. So they're talking about 5.4% dicyandiamide, they're talking about 0.09% dihydrotriazine, they're talking about creatinine, they're talking about the heavy metals of mercury and lead as being contained in the China-sourced creatine. Now pay attention to this source. Now, number one, this is 2006. And number two, the source is a commercial entity. This isn't a study that's been cited. This is testing that's been done by a commercial entity. So this data that's being used to demonize China-derived creatine is really old data. Now, by comparison, imagine trying to judge your 2025 iPhone today by the capabilities that it had and the technology that existed back in 2006. They are worlds apart, and similarly, the creatine industry has also progressed. I think it's also important to note that this is commercial data, so it's not an independent, peer-reviewed analysis. This is commercially driven data. Something I would encourage consumers to know to check is authors' competing interests. So studies often have to cite when authors that are involved in something may have declarations they need to make it very clear that there may be some bias that those who are reading need to take into an account. The review that is often cited by those that are suggesting that Chinese sourced creatine is inferior is based on a review where the list of authors that have what's called competing interests is pretty extensive. So we do need to take that into account as under the banner of making sure that we understand the nuances behind the why of when something is being published. So I'll put up a slide in a moment about what's important to ask brands when it comes to purity and contamination of creatine. But fundamentally, not all Chinese-derived creatine is to be tarred with the same brush. Look, I'm sure there are suppliers that you do need to be concerned about, and this is why it's important to third-party test and verify raw materials, and that is on brands to do. And you need to keep asking brands to show their third-party testing and analyses so that you can feel comfortable with it, because not everyone wants to pay double or in some cases triple for their creatine, when studies have consistently shown that creatine monohydrate is creatine monohydrate. This is an excerpt from an ebook I've been writing to try and dispel some of these myths around creatine, because the amount of things that I'm hearing are wild. But for the purpose of, if you're a consumer and you're like, how can I get on top of this? What's actually important when it comes to creatine? Here's my list. So number one, purity. Quality brands are going to verify their raw materials with a purity analysis, and this will be reflected to be 99% or above. The next thing that is checked is every raw material. They will check it for contaminants. They will check it for heavy metals. Then quality brands also use a high mesh. So this means a small particle size. This helps with facilitating absorption. Then creatine monohydrate is the type of creatine that is expansively in studies, not these novel forms. I can provide science around that as well. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about, that brands can share with you their third-party testing. They can do a purity analysis and you're looking for 99% or above. And as you can see here, ours is 103%. So nothing else but creatine monohydrate in there. We've also checked the heavy metals. They're below required limits. We've also checked those DCDDHT creatinine levels, all come up below the limit of quantification. Below the limit of quantification means it's not detected, it's not there. So I can say with an absolute level of confidence that whether you choose a China-derived or a German-derived creatine, you are getting pure and quality creatine as long as your brands are doing the testing that they need to do to verify their raw material and they're working with a reputable supplier. You don't have to choose one over the other if you're worried about safety. As long as your brand is doing their due diligence and doing their third-party testing to make sure that they're delivering a safe product, then you have absolutely nothing to worry about. Quality is a non-negotiable element of our brand at My Brain Co. You will know that we regularly third-party test all of our raw materials, and we're quite happy to share that data with our consumers when they ask. You would know from our other products that we regularly partner with trademarked brands that are branded ingredients that show clinical efficacy or delivery systems or something that adds value to the outcome of the product for our end consumer. The bottom line is, if there was a clinical benefit for using a trademarked version of creatine because of efficacy or clinical studies, we absolutely would have chosen to use it. But there simply isn't enough evidence to support paying a premium for what is essentially just really great marketing.